Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning. We are getting ready to get started for our Wingspan webinar from Spreadsheets to Scale, How to Transform Contractor Onboarding. We are just waiting for a few more folks to join, so hang tight, and we'll get started in just another minute or two here. All right, I see a few more folks coming in. We're going to kick things off in just a moment here. And as I get started, we'll go through a couple quick notes on housekeeping, frequently asked questions. Then we'll dig into some intros and then dig into our great conversation with Greer today. All right, let me go ahead and get some things out of the way here. Just a quick note, my name is Sarah Strope and I am the marketing leader for Wingspan. If those of you who are not familiar with Wingspan, we are a purpose-built platform for managing the contractor lifecycle, from onboarding to payments to tax compliance. A quick note, this session is being recorded and we will share the recording with all participants and registrants after the event. There is a Q&A feature as part of our platform, and you can submit your questions at any time. We'll do our best to address them during the presentation, and if not, we have some time at the end as well. If there's a question that you want to ask just directly, you can do that in the chat as well, and we're happy to follow up with you afterwards. And if at any point you're having a technical issue, you can use the chat feature to message us for assistance. We are really excited today to be joined by Greer McBride. She is a talent operations specialist at BELAY, and she has been a fantastic customer and partner for several years. So Greer, why don't we kick things off and tell us a little bit about yourself? And we'd also love to hear a little bit about BELAY for those of us who maybe aren't as familiar.
Absolutely. Well, first, thank you so much for having me on today. It's always a great pleasure to spend time with the Wingspan team. We're big fans over at BELAY of you guys, so always grateful for the opportunity to collaborate. But as you stated, my name is Greer McBride. I am the talent operations specialist. I've been a part of BELAY for the last 5 years. And personally, I'm newly married. When you said McBride, I was like, yes, that is my last name. I've been married for about 7 months, and I'm also about 5 months pregnant with me and my husband's first child. So we've got a lot of exciting things going on. And so that's just personally, but professionally, I work with BELAY, which is a fantastic organization where we work to partner leaders and organizations with highly skilled US-based remote professionals. So we specialize in executive assistants, bookkeepers, and marketing assistants. And our we always say our vision is to help you achieve your vision. And so our job is to help connect busy clients, so entrepreneurs, professionals, and connect them with incredible contractors who are going to be able to support them and move them higher in what they're trying to achieve in their business. I personally work at the talent department, and so my day-to-day is focused on our systems, workflows, and processes. So related to hiring our contractors. So that's going to be recruitment, hiring, onboarding, and then their entire life cycle journey at BELAY. So from the moment that they hire with us, and then sometimes sadly when they move on to even greater journeys in their professional career, we're going to be with them through that entire process. So I'm going to work to identify operational gaps and try to build processes to help support my team. I work with a bunch of incredible people, recruiters, and some leaders in our department, and they support over thousands of contractors, and just see what we can do to get rid of that unnecessary friction for our internal teams and our processes.
Great. So it sounds like contractors are really core to BELAY. Can you tell me a little bit about the role that contractors play? It sounds like they are actually providing revenue generating services, and that you expect your contractor base to keep growing. Is that correct? How much has it grown over the past few years?
We've grown. Sometimes I forget when preparing for this, I was like, man, we really have grown a lot. We've been it's been a great it's a beautiful gift to grow. It's also a little scary at times. And so we have grown. I would say that we probably almost doubled in size since I've been there. And so different years, different amount of growth, but we've been very fortunate to see growth every year in our company. And our contractors are vital to our organization. We wouldn't be here without them. We hire 1099 contractors, and we connect them with clients who are using our services, and then we stay with them through that entire journey. And so that's where our partnership with Wingspan comes in. We use Wingspan to invoice, get the invoices and pay our contractors. And so, and it's also what we use to bill our clients. And so, we are through that entire process. It's not just we meet the contractors and we hand them off. Like, we're with them for the entire journey and all of the engagements, and they can serve multiple clients with us. So there's a lot going on, and we're going to stay close with them during that process.
Fantastic. So Greer, you have this background across nonprofits and corporate environments. You come into BELAY about 5 years ago, correct?
Yes.
And over the course of that 5 years, you've gone from serving a couple hundred to a couple thousand to multiple thousands of contractors. So I'm really excited today to dig into what you've learned along that journey. We're going to start with talking a little bit about what was happening in the early days. Where were you stuck? What were kind of some of the manual processes? What were all the different tools you were working? And when did you get to that point of like, this doesn't work? Next, we're going to talk about what you did to build that scalable process and how you looked across, all of the tools and all of your colleagues, and kind of say, where could we find efficiency? What could work better? And not only what could work better for us at BELAY, but what could also work better for all of those contractors that we serve as well. And we'll wrap up with what it looks like to see results, and what does scaled actually look like, and how does that help you in what you just said, how you expect to continue growing, and kind of what are the key components of your kind of ideal checklist that you cover now. Ready to dig in?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay, great. We're going to stop sharing slide deck and just have this fantastic conversation. So tell me a little bit about what it was like. If you can go back in the Wayback Machine to 5 years ago, what was happening? What did it look like to onboard a contractor? How long did it take? What tools were you using? Walk me through that experience.
Yeah. So when I first came on board, I went back and I checked the numbers, and it was taking us about 27 days for someone to apply, and then contract. Now, a few caveats to that is that, people can choose to go a little faster or a little slower. So obviously there's some, just a little bit, with those numbers, but in reality, it was taking closer to a month to just get someone to contract it. And that's not even placed with a client. And so, and that's the average. And so some people were, a lot lower and some people were a lot higher. And so what we, when I look back at that, time, a lot of what we were doing was we had individual people doing individual things. And it sounds exactly as we all work, you each have your roles. And that was, it worked. I mean, look where Belay has gotten. And that's one of the best, one of the key things I will point out is that your past is not necessarily a problem, with how you've been doing things. Things were working great. I think what had happened with us and we're going was we were experiencing this incredible, very fortunate seasons of, different types of growth. And one of the things that we were running into is, some of the information was siloed. And so on board this contractor, they would go to this person for this item, then they would go to this person for this item. They were
a lot of handoffs along the way too.
And it was going between two different departments for their recruitment and their onboarding. And again, it was working. I think where we were noticing the gaps was, when you have PTO, headcount, changes, and as well, realizing that at certain levels of growth, certain things just do not work when you get into a higher volume. When numbers start getting to a certain, just getting to a certain point, certain things are just not going to work as well as they used to. So that was, pretty much where the process of it would start with someone, then they would get handed off. There was a lot of, the automation wasn't in place that we have now. And so there was a lot of, hey, here's so-and-so, they are ready, by literally typing that out and tell them here's the system. So, that process works, and it works when you're only doing a smaller amount. However, when you get to a larger number, what we were noticing too was that we would send the information provided with one person and it was manual. Then if that person went away for a week, you have someone who's not maybe typically doing it and they're doing the best they can, but they're also juggling their current role. And so that's going to slow us down in some regards. And so how do we kind of, bridge that gap and make sure that we're not experiencing a slowdown in certain areas just because we lose someone to a well-deserved vacation for a week.
Right. So there were all of these kind of handoffs. There was a lot of manual work being done. I imagine too that if it's taking 30 days or more to onboard a contractor, when your clients are like, I need interim help now, what's the number one word that comes to mind when you reflect back on those days? What was happening?
I think it was more just fragmented and, you had really smart people working extremely fast, and we had people, and we still do, we still have some of the same incredible people who are working with us. They're extremely efficient, but when they do not have an admin permission to the onboarding software, they literally cannot move faster until they get a Slack back from the person who does have admin permissions or a chatter back saying this is the issue. And, like for example, for today, if this was, 3 or 4 years ago and I was doing it, I would not be able to respond to them until after 2:30 because I'm going on another meeting right after this. So you just lost an hour and a half of them waiting to handle this one troubleshooting issue. It may not even be an issue. It could just be a simple like, oh, let me just resend them their modules or something like that. So a lot of, I would say it was fragmented in the sense that there was lack of visibility and not everyone was able to clearly see what they needed to see. And they were willing and ready to move as fast as possible, and they wanted to, and the contractors were ready and willing to move as fast as possible, and the clients were like, we want help. Everyone was ready, but our systems were not allowing us to sometimes move as fast as we wanted to.
With that, how much time do you estimate your team was losing between all these kind of siloed tools and processes?
I would say that, I mean, they could have bad weeks where, they could, I think it would kind of depend, but it would depend sometimes on, maybe us, the operations members. If we had a busy week with meetings, they could lose up to 4 to 5 hours just waiting for a contractor, because they're waiting an hour to two to get a response back, because I'm putting my Slack on, do not disturb, and I'm focusing on what I'm doing. And so I think they were losing at time at minimum a few hours a week just waiting for someone else to provide visibility into what the issue was, or where someone was held up, or what they were missing, and things of that nature.
Do you have a sense of what the contractors felt during this time too? Were they feeling that fragmentation, or how did it impact them?
Yeah, I think we've we've had a lot of contractors over the years that we've developed really close relationships. Some have even come to work for our corporate team, and they have been very kindly, provided their feedback and surveys, and just through relationships. And a lot of them have told us that they can appreciate how much we're trying, but sometimes it's just a frustration of wanting to move quickly. These are 1099 contractors, so it's not as a W-2 position of like the day that we decide to hire, that you're getting, you're on the payroll, you're joining a community to where you're being ability to get matched with a client. And so we have to keep that in mind from the contractor experience of, we can have the best intentions, and I think they experience that, but there's also, they've got to get moving through, and we don't want to be the bottleneck, because they're trying to get matched with a client so that way they can, have income and move forward, and they want to serve a client, and put their gifts and talents to use, and do what they want to do, in whatever capacity that is. And so I think that there was a lot of there could be frustration of just they want to move. It felt like a lot of people were just unintentionally being held back.
Yeah.
They couldn't move as fast as they wanted to move. And there are some people who do not want a client match necessarily, the week that they were hired by BELAY. But there are some people who are
ready to go.
Yeah, they're ready to go. And so you want to be able to provide that flexibility for them to go through it as fast as they want, and not be the holdup. And so I think that there was some frustration of that, of when they're ready, they're waiting for responses back of how do they, this isn't working, or this email, or this, access to this, they're waiting on something, and the other person is just waiting to see, there's a lot of, and, sometimes it would be working, and there was no way to really tell, that visibility.
There was a lack of visibility, I'm hearing too. So it's not only fragmentation, but there was a lack of visibility, both within your team and then between your team and your contractors. And so no matter if contractors were like, I'm ready, I've got capacity, or I even know a company that's looking that I'm hoping to match with, so I can jump in as their interim EA or their interim bookkeeper, doesn't matter. Or if they're like, I just want to kind of see what's out there. There were just all these moments of pause and wait. So I'm kind of curious, was there a moment that you knew things had to change? What was happening? Where you're just like, enough is enough. We gotta shake things up.
Yeah, I think we all knew, me and my team, I can't take all the credit. There was a lot of people around of realizing like, okay, we're not seeing the scalability with this current process that we want to. It was working, and it did, but it's not helping us, and that's especially when we're trying to cross different departments. We're this one. And so we have made a bunch of different moves, and they were very helpful. We had, had some reorganization, and we had changed a few different things, and some roles had shifted, and those were very helpful. But at the same time, we had not approached our software and some of those like very specific processes related to onboarding. And I think, I think for us, it was just, especially when it was, I had a counterpart at the time in my department, and when one of us would go on PTO, you would really realize like it was a lot. It was a lot harder because you were trying to cover both, and just realized that it was too dependent on somebody being able to have that visibility, and we're
So dependent on people, individual people.
to give that to each members of our team. And that wasn't what they needed. They didn't need to have back end knowledge and back end permission necessarily to stuff. They needed just straight visibility to be able to see when someone was landing somewhere. And so I think that was kind of the issue of just seeing it and realizing that we were stuck in a rut a little bit of being able to get through things the way that we typically have a standard that we hold ourselves to for processes and efficiencies, and it wasn't the one that it just wasn't quite exactly where we wanted to be.
Yeah. And I think you had mentioned, and it's okay, you don't need to name names, that while you were managing some of this manually, it sounds like through Slacks and emails, maybe some spreadsheets here and there, you were using another kind of software tool as well as part of the onboarding process.
Yeah.
But when we had spoken earlier, you mentioned, and maybe you could tell us a little more, maybe part of the realization is that you were using a tool that wasn't quite designed to do what you wanted it to do. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we were using a tool that was great for facilitating a virtual, if you will, classroom format almost of delivering materials. And so it wasn't necessarily that the delivery of the materials was not great. It was that this was high volume. We're doing high volume staffing. That was what you kind of put our industry as, and with that, we've got to be able to accompany a large amount of people very, very quickly. So it was something that I just don't think it was designed with our situation in mind. And that's okay. We were using it for something else, and then we tried it for this, and it worked to an extent. It just has a few key things that we needed, and you just don't know when you get to that certain size in your business. You begin to realize, okay, like every time we approach a software, we approach a process, we have to keep this in mind. And now that we're at this certain threshold, I think we've all kind of realized, okay, like this is the kind of things that we need to be looking for when designing like a working relationship with the software that we're going to be able that we're all going to have be happy with over time. And so I think it worked great for what it was designed to do, but
you're kind of pushing the boundaries.
Yeah, it just quite, a lot of ours is we have to keep in mind, what is it, the key things that your business is always going to be, and ours is always going to be high volume staffing. And so like, that's not going to change. And so we've got to always keep that in mind when we're doing something. And now we know what, I think before too, you don't always know what high volume, what that number for high volume could truly entail. And now we're at that level to where we've got to keep that in mind, and our numbers are higher, and we're grateful for that. But we've got to make sure that we keep that in mind with the tools that we're using.
I think that's a great point in terms of volume. It might vary for everybody's industry, whether you're listening to this now or somebody listening to it later. High volume for one industry might mean, a couple hundred, and for another might mean a couple thousand. So, but you have to keep in mind what that is for your team and where those thresholds are. So what I'm hearing is, you were using a tool that wasn't quite designed for the full onboarding workflow in terms of making sure you get all of the payment information up and running. You get all of the kind of like ID and tax verifications. It was working great for getting people on board and understanding how BELAY and how the whole team and processes work. And then that tipping point though was that if one person went on vacation from your core team, there was a lack of visibility and people were getting stuck and there was a lot of waiting, and all this was taking days, which at the end of the day was really impacting the contractor experience. So let's talk about what you did to kind of shift things. You mentioned a little bit of some like reorganization internally, and then the next part you prioritized was looking at your software and your tooling. So how did you decide what part of onboarding needed the most attention? And then maybe tell us a little bit about where Wingspan came into the mix there.
Yeah, so I'll start with Wingspan actually, because that was the first part of that. When we switched to Wingspan, we went from, I believe was 2021. I really thought it was 2023, but it's further along than and it's been a great partnership. We were able to, we were able to take out a lot of the manual work of, W-9s, all that information that we would need to gather. And so when we did that, we were able to simply have to build something that send them to Wingspan and got them invited. And so that really, it really, really helped kind of just cut down a lot of the manual work because they were able to, they're able to quickly go into Wingspan, fill out what information they need, and it auto generates that W-9. So we're not even sending them that information. It's just creating itself. So when we started with that, and I think, once you start with something, it really helps, helps you be able to see, okay, we're doing this here and that's working. What are different ways that we can mimic that? And so I think for the next part, when we were looking at it, it was, what can we do to easily provide that visibility like we have with Wingspan, but still maintain that automation? And so I definitely can't take credit. We had another person on our team who was very instrumental in designing part of this, onboarding experience. And so we were able to use her knowledge of our applicant tracking system to design something within our applicant tracking system that would automatically provide that same visibility that our talent, we call them talent specialists, but these are people who are recruiting our contractors, to be able to see that that onboarding experience. And I think part of what I've realized through this whole experience too is, we need to be able to provide some visibility. It doesn't mean necessarily that I, am, when I'm working with my teammates, I expect them who, especially if they have a different role than I do, to, know how to, build something, troubleshoot something like that. I just think that people are going to move faster. They're going to have more confidence in helping their people troubleshoot something if they have the visibility and the ability to see where people are landing and to be able to potentially isolate those common problems that maybe are not necessarily on our side, not related to the software, but just normal troubleshooting things, and want to be able to differentiate the two.
Right. What's a people problem versus a software problem.
And so that they can see, and they're not, and not everything is going to be, you can't have total visibility, but you can get to this point where if you find the right tools, you're able to, your team's going to be able to look at something and be like, I am pretty sure this is something that I just need to coach them on, like, oh, you just need to do this, or, this is a bigger issue. And so that was what was really great about, we had Wingspan, and, at first we didn't realize that we could even give all of our team access and that would work. It always sat with me. But that's one thing that we started kind of expanding upon, was the visibility of, well, maybe we can just let them look and see, and then they can clue me in if they're, loop me in if there's something else going on that isn't, that maybe is and so that's kind of what, and just taking out those extra steps of, because we provided visibility and they're able to see their people that they're hiring move through, and they're not wondering themselves. So in addition to the contractor feeling like they know where they're going and what they have left to do, want to provide that same visibility to the team, so that way they can see their people and they can provide, support and coaching as they need it to get them through.
So walk me through what things look like today. You had mentioned that previously there were Slacks, there were emails, there were spreadsheets, there were some tools that had some insight, not the other. Walk us through what things look like today, and how does your team kind of track from, hey, I'm trying to recruit all of these contractors to join, to I've actually got them going through, maybe we can even dig into the 3 components of your checklist there.
Yeah. So one of the things that when we kind of drilled down into is that we know that there are a lot of different fields. We need accounts, or we need addresses and phone numbers and all of that. And we need them to go through certain things and all that. But that's just a lot to remember. And quite frankly, impossible to remember all the different things that we need them. So we kind of moved everything into 3 different buckets. And for us, those are our onboarding modules that are going to tell a contractor all the information that they need to be successful with BELAY. So what do they need to know to continue through to, start working to get a match with the client, to get paid, to, if they have a question, where do they submit a ticket? Like, what do they need to know now that they are a 1099 contractor through us? And then the next would be their Wingspan account setup. And then the third thing that we have is the confirmation of their requested start date. So we know that those are the 3 things, and those that we have to have for them to move forward. We kind of view that as the gate of, until you get those things done, you're not fully onboarded. You're not going to continue moving forward in the process, because if you do, it's going to create a really big holdup with our clients. Our clients are, they're waiting for support. They want support. Our contractors want to provide that. But we want, when they're matched and they're moving forward and they're starting that relationship, we want them to have that time and not be, focused on like, is my bank account information set up because it's about to be the first time that I get paid. We don't want that. We want them to be fully ready to go. So we do kind of hold that line. Okay. And what it kind of helps is, go ahead.
I was just going to clarify. So step 1, they have to watch this module, right? They have to watch this learning module, and you do that through Fountain, correct?
Correct. We were able to do it entirely in our applicant tracking system, Fountain. And that would be one of the other great things that I think we learned is that Fountain, to my knowledge, does not market itself as, you can use us for onboarding modules. Maybe they do, but I've never heard. They're an applicant tracking system for, hiring, recruiting and hiring. And, one of our previous colleagues had a ton of knowledge, and she was a Fountain, and she was able to be like, well, actually, we can use this for modules. And our team together worked and created those modules within Fountain. And we're able, and that provided, because of her idea to do that, it allowed us to see like, okay, they have this incredible visibility of an applicant becoming a contractor, and we can mimic that completely and provide all the same automation. So all of our emails, our text messages, just a reminder, delivery of the information, moving them from step to step, all of that Fountain provides its automation, and it's a fantastic system. And so we're able to, have them go through that entire process that's automated, and our team is able to just watch them go through. And so the same with Wingspan.
And then they go to Wingspan where they can set up all of their payments.
And they're doing it all at the same time. That's the other thing, is that because we were building automations, when they're onboarded, they're getting those steps all at the same time. And so they can go through their modules, they can set up their Wingspan account, and we built it to where the systems are talking to each other. And so when they're done, all of those 3 fields that we have each have a corresponding field. And so they're not going to be marked as fully onboarded until they're flipped to either, yes, they completed, or they're active, and they've done those things. And so that's part of what we realize, is that we have these systems and they have these automation capabilities. So let's build it to talk to each other and to take out that manual work, because we don't want our talent specialist to have to spend time chasing them down, tracking. That's not what they're here to do necessarily. They're here to, sometimes they've got to do little things like that, but we want them to be able to focus their time on hiring great talent, supporting our talent through their process. And so they can look and they can remember those 3 buckets a lot easier than all the different steps. And so they can say like, oh, they are onboarded, but they're just not ready to start because it's not, March 19th. And that was the start date that this contractor provided. But we can easily see that they have their wingspan set up and their onboarding set up. And for us, we are very, a little aggressive about in the system. Like there's a giant banner and it says like they're not onboarded, and it says, these couple of reasons. We want everyone to know and very quickly be able to be like, okay, this one, and so they can check. And for us, making it as simple as possible. So I've created reports and they're going to filter into that report if they're missing this one, if they're missing this step. Our systems that we use are great. So Wingspan is going to send an automated reminder about that. You're missing this, you've got to continue. And then, Fountain is also going to be able to set up to do that. And so that's going to take a lot of the pressure off our team of not having to go through and be like, it's been 2 days, I need to send an email here. Right. Do it for us.
Automate that. And I really like that banner that you mentioned in terms of visibility. So when I think back to those, that fragmentation we were feeling before, now you've got this incredible visibility even across the different like tools and steps in your onboarding process. So if your onboarding process is first, like, recruit the applicant, make sure they understand BELAY and the process. And then once they've done that, make sure they get onboarded for their payments information. And then they set their start date of when they're willing to start working with a client. Now you can actually see that all in any applicant's profile. Anybody can pull it up, and they've got this kind of checklist banner where they can see where the applicant is at, right?
Yeah, and it's great too, because the different systems that we're using allow us to, it's so funny. When I'm preparing this, I was looking, I was like, it's such simple automation, but Wingspan does it, Salesforce does it, Fountain does it. And it's literally, you're attaching color to a word. And it's like, like in Fountain, it's this color if this isn't done. And your brain automatically starts to associate. When I'm in Fountain, if they're not this color, they're not, it hasn't flipped over and they're not correct. Wingspan does the same thing. If they don't have those 3 major areas completed, it's not going to show up that way. And then you can easily spot that visibility of what they're missing and go in and start to dive a little bit deeper with the contractor of what they need to do. And sometimes that's going to take time, and we can't fix all the things, but we want to provide as much visibility and quick ability to get in and figure out what the step is. And so if we can divide it into 3 buckets and 3 things, then they know, oh, if it's in here, then they know exactly where to go. And so even though it sounds so simple, when you really look back on it, dividing it into those things of whatever is applicable to your business, and it may not be 3, it may be 5, or it may just be 2, right. But whatever it is, it doesn't have to be the only 2 things. Just dividing it into areas of where people can easily point to go, and right. Then move from there, like what they have left.
So it sounds like there was a lot of thought about workflow and integration of tools. Before we move on, because you have some really incredible results that I want to make sure everybody hears, what about the impact? So I see how this is impacting your whole team. All your talent specialists really understand where their contractors and applicants are moving through the pipeline. People are understanding when people are ready to actually start working with the client, or if they can be matched. What about for the contractors themselves? Did this help them get some visibility at all? And did you hear any feedback from the contractors?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely always try to, do surveys and ask them to provide their feedback. And we really felt like we've got a lot of great feedback that they were moving quicker. And that I think that they were just, we were able to kind of see it in different areas, not even from direct feedback, but so a few, instances of where we're able to get that actual verbiage feedback from them of like, yeah, we really do feel like, we're moving quicker and it worked really well. Also, I think that, we noticed that we had a specific support ticket type. It went down, a ton. And they were not having to get in and submit a ticket and ask questions about it, just because we had eliminated so much of that waiting around for that information. And so I feel very confident that we were just, that with the changes that were implemented over the last, year or so, we were able to give them back some visibility of where, because, when you start a new role, you just don't know anything that's going on, really. I mean, it never fails. And so to not feel so out of sorts and to feel like they had places to go, because they may not know exactly what's going on, but if they feel like, okay, I see an email, I can email here, I see, I got all the information, or they told me these 3 things and I don't remember getting 3 things, so I can go, ask, and if they need to. And so hopefully we're, able to be more I will say, like, our talent specialists are so on top of it that I feel like really what's changed is they are catching what our contractors don't have before the contractors have a chance to email back. Like, they're so on top of it. They're, like, hey, they didn't get this, what do you think's going on? Like, I can see that they didn't, because they're checking the history of their profile and seeing that email didn't go through. And so I would also say that I think that's one of the beautiful things is our team is, they're a fantastic group of individuals who are so on top of it that they're just able to be that proactive too.
Yeah. And it's really helped them go from being reactive, being proactive. So let's talk about the results a little bit, because you've really had some incredible success since you've been able to shift the way you're doing things from these manual processes and fragmented tools and systems to a much more integrated stack. You started out by telling us that 5 years ago, it was taking 30 or more days to onboard a contractor. What did you get to last year? What was the average amount of time it took to onboard a contractor?
When we started this process, I believe we were at 17 when we made a few key shifts. Then before we started our onboarding kind of just revamp and updating different things, we went down to 15. But over the past year of implementing these, of moving our modules into Fountain and doing a couple of different things, we were able to get it down to 11 days. And so that's where we're at currently in 2026. It is only March, but it's basically the end of Q1. And so I'll take it. And I think what we found was we were kind of at that 15 mark, 15, 17. And it was like, how do we get people the ability to move through this process quicker? And now I feel very confident that our systems are scalable and that they're going to be able to handle, like, for example, I will be going on maternity leave, and our system is not dependent on me being here or another member being here and moving it through. It's going to go just fine because our tools are in place and they're able to handle either, different headcount fluctuations, PTO, extended leaves, things like that. And so I feel confident that we'll still be able to maintain that number because of, 11 days of keeping our contractors from application to contracted and getting them through the process.
That's awesome. So for Belay's full onboarding process, from kind of identifying your contractors, having them go through your educational modules and system setup, inclusive of getting payments ready to go with Wingspan, and having all of your tax compliance components in place, to matching, to having them ready to work with a client, it's gone from maybe over 30 days down to 17 days, now down to 11. That's incredible. Yes. What's been the biggest surprise throughout this journey for you?
I think that one of the biggest surprises is, learning. I think I learned a lot when working with my teammates last year, of them, us coming together and brainstorming and being like, okay, I think we can use our applicant tracking system for onboarding. And at first, it just never really occurred to me that, like, using something that as it wasn't necessarily designed to, and there's obviously limits to that, but our existing system can do more than we initially think. And when you have a system that is well built, there might be different things that you can really expand and leverage it to support your processes without necessarily adding another platform and sending them to different places. And that's something that we really wanted to pull back. We didn't want to keep sending them here and keep sending them there and keep sending them there. We wanted to really throw that down. And so I think that was one of the things that really surprised me of just, what we could do with an existing tool. And some of those tools were, I believe I always mispronounce it, but Zapier, we were like, we had this tool that we were using for other things, and we could really upgrade our automations and enhance our system by, being like, okay, so what type of automations can we add? And those, it's not as complicated as an intense as I thought it would be.
Yeah.
And I don't say that to take away from what our incredible IT team does. Of like, it is a lot of work where they're implementing and they worked super hard on it. But I would have thought it was a lot harder to get something that could function in that way. And really, there's so much that's available these days. And so sometimes just looking into what you're currently using and trying to, also putting together a bit of a think tank, if you will, of just people who really excel in certain systems and are creative problem solvers, and seeing what you can come up with. And so being able to use our ATS system with onboarding has really, now that I am over Fountain as well, I'm able to look at it completely different. And I have learned through just working closely with them and learning I can kind of look at this and put it on a different set of lens and be like, okay, what else can we possibly do with this? How can we use this to improve our systems? I think I was just wasn't quite looking at it the same way. And it really surprised me of what's necessarily available to us with what we currently have.
Yeah. And with working with Wingspan, was there anything that surprised you in terms of like the ease of getting someone started, or tracking W-9s and 1099s, or any other information?
Yeah, we, being able to move to Wingspan, and I think for us, cutting down on having to ask for the W-9 and upload and all of that information just made things so easy. I think in forming the relationship with Wingspan, I have learned that when you're evaluating software to use, you do obviously have to, look at the software and make sure that it's, developed well and, it's going to work well and all of that stuff. But software always has its little glitches and its little things, and nothing is ever going to be perfect. And you're sometimes going to have a little thing that, you're encountering problems. And what I've learned with what sets, Wingspan apart is that our relationship that we built, and that when we're encountering a problem, we can approach it together and be like, okay, like that flexibility to look at something, and for you guys to say, well, what if we just said it wasn't a requirement for this in an automation? We did that with our account manager, Jason. We looked at something that had kind of been like causing a few little things here and there, and for over a year probably. And he looked at it and he just was like, what if we just didn't use that part of the automate? Like, what if we just get away with it? And it solved everything. And so I think that was one of the things that now when if we're evaluating a tool, of looking of like, what is the company relationship going to be like? Because you're going
to a true partnership, and that you can customize and understand your unique workflows.
Roadblocks and different things. And that's just to be accounted for. But we can't always have that working. We don't always have that working relationship and that partnership. And we have that with you guys, and we have that with Fountain, and our tools and how we've done it we've been able to achieve so much, in my opinion, so much more than we could have, because we're able to have those open conversations about, okay, well, what do you think? And not everything's, it's not necessarily, hear me, not like of like the changes, but just of what can we do in our process too about, and the same thing of just that feedback loop of being able to talk and be like, okay, well, if we try this or putting this in the process, and when you can collaborate together, we're able to, now we operate with Wingspan of every 2-week bi-weekly meeting with our account manager. I don't have to attend that often because I don't have problems. Like, I just don't have issues. And I think that is what more could you ask for? You know, like with onboarding, if I have an issue, I contact, but I think that really speaks to the level of, you know, what we were able to do and really work to, you know, build scalable systems that fit our processes.
So just a quick recap, you went from, less than 1,000 contractors to over 2,000 contractors in the past few years. You went from all of these fragmented tools and lack of visibility. One team member went out, it was hard to know where somebody was, and contractors who were taking weeks to get started and get matched with a client so they could go serve as their interim, executive assistant or interim, finance team member. And now you've got over 2,000 contractors on the platform. Your whole team has visibility into where they are in BELAY's unique onboarding process that includes education and kind of initial first steps with Fountain, then all of the kind of payments and compliance set up with Wingspan, to making sure it's really clear when they can get started with the client. You've been able to cut that almost in half. And you've learned that really integrations, partnership, and leveraging kind of the expertise across your team is what makes this happen. So for all of the other kind of operations and HR leaders that either are listening today or listening later, what is one thing that you know now that you wish you knew earlier? What's kind of like your one piece of advice for them?
I think if I could, especially just things that I've learned, if I could go back, I would say that if you can empower your team with visibility and understanding of the process, you're going to go, in my opinion, so much further than siloing that knowledge. I think it feels kind of counterintuitive for us, the people that are the ops and the IT people and the people who are about systems and processes to, I'm not a recruiter. And so I am not they have a completely different set of gifts and talents. And we may think, well, they don't need to know this and all that. But I really believe that when you empower them with, one, visibility, and then two, understanding of the process and how it works, and what's going on in the system as best as you can without too much nitty-gritty detail, you're going to allow them to move quicker and faster through that entire experience. And what that's going to in turn do is really improve your user experience. So whether that's customers, contractors, whatever that is, it's because they're talking with people who completely understand what they're going through. Because that's the other part, is that I don't want my teammates to be having conversations with their contractors, and because I didn't, properly, prepare them with for how things were going for a process change or something like that, they don't really know how to explain that to the contractor. And so when they feel like they have the knowledge that they need, then they're going to also in turn really create an even more positive user experience for the people that they're serving. And I really think that it just goes so much further when they have that visibility and understanding of the process.
I love that. And Greer, as I pull up a couple kind of final notes here for the team, you mentioned something when we talked, you had this really great nugget about what happens to really, in order to be able to scale, what do you have to do?
Well, I think that it's, with scaling, it's not about just speed, it's about creating the systems that empower your team. But it's also about creating that partnership, because when you onboard with your contractors or your customers or whoever that you're onboarding, you're beginning a relationship with them and a partnership. And how that sets off is really going to, start their experience with you as well. And so you really want to start that off well. And so scaling, it's really not about just simplifying. It's about looking at it at the bigger picture, and each of those things really have a lot of impact in a lot of different areas.
Great. Thank you so much. Greer, this has been incredibly helpful. I'm sure you gave a lot of folks great tips about what you need to do in order to get out of kind of that manual process into systems and tools that work seamlessly together. And really this idea of like simplifying and empowering your teams in order to kind of keep scaling. So appreciate your time today and all of your insights. Thank you for your partnership and being such a great customer. For everyone else, just a quick reminder, in terms of more information, you can always go to wingspan.app/resources. We'll have a recap of this conversation available there in just another couple days. We are also going to be on the road. Wingspan is at a couple events coming up here at the end of March. We are at a national claims conference for those of you in insurance, and we are at, for those of you in HR and operations, we are at the Transform conference in Vegas next week. And then we have another webinar. We're doing a number of these webinars. Our next one will be on April 22nd, and it is about the future of flexible work. We're going to be sharing insights from a custom research report that we just did of 500 leaders and how they're managing everything from onboarding to payments. So thank you again, Greer, for your time, and to BELAY for your great partnership. And thanks everyone for listening. Have a great day.
Thank you, Sarah.